Card Fighters, welcome to the new era of Vanguard as Season 2 of Overdress kicks off today with the new reveals for the very first trial deck of Vanguard Overdress. We got some new Luard-esque shenanigans, but then, right straight from a trial deck.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and yes, today marks a very important day because this is the very first reveals for the new season of Vanguard Overdress for the card game itself, because yes, the anime is already in its third season coming around the corner, but the card game itself enters, in my personal opinion, its second season with the end of the first year of Overdress, with the start of Set 6. But before we enter Set 6, we got 3 new trial decks, and before we can talk about all those trial decks, we have a brand new ride line of one of those trial decks, which is of course none other than a Cater Sanctuary one. And the mechanic of this trial deck is very surprising, as already stated in the intro, it's very Luard-esque, but at the same time, Luard stole his whole mechanic from Gear Chronicle, so you could also say it's very Gear Chronicle-esque. So, without any jumping around the whole topic, let's jump straight into these cards and see what this new ride line for this new trial deck has in store for Cater Sanctuary, and it's gonna be very interesting, and I'm very looking forward to the future reveals, as this new mechanic slash archetype is looking very interesting and fun to play. As first off, we of course have their ceremonial starter, as we have Youth following in footsteps, Youth. Yes, we went from Dragon to whatever to now we have Youth in Youth. Bravo, Bushiroad, bravo. What's the next thing? Mermaid, human, thing? We have to wait and see. Of course, this is just a generic starter, which has the generic skill, which is auto when the unit rode upon. If 1 second, draw a card. We're gonna move on to the grade 1, which is a very interesting grade 1, which is honestly very strong for a ride line card, as we have Determined to Break Away Youth, and this Youth has the effect, continues to Vanguard Rigid Circle. During the battle this unit attacked, this unit gets power plus 2k. We see this time and time again, 10k, beater, whatever. But then it also has a skill, although when the unit is rode upon by Knight of Ardent Light Youth, aka the grade 2, cost Soulless 1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with Youthberg in its card name, which is the grade 3's. Very important part, the S on the end. In its card name from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, or choose up to 1 grade 2 or less unit card from among them, call to the Rigid Circle, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So either this searches you a grade 3, or you just call unit onto the field, which basically always going to be a +1, which honestly for a Soul Dice is really damn good, especially for this archetype, because in a generic sense you might say this is either a Persona Rite Searcher or a +1 on the board. But for the Youthberg build, it's not necessarily a Persona Rite Searcher, but that will become more clear once we take a look at the other cards that has been revealed so far. But overall, this grade 1 is a perfect support card for this new archetype. Now, moving up to the grade 2, we've got Knight of Ardent Light Youth, and this one has the effect, although when a unit is rode upon by a unit with the RevolDress ability, which is a new keyword mechanic of this new deck, cost, counter +1, choose a grade 2 or greater card from your drop and put it into your hand. Again, it's a generic +1 for most ride lines, and in this case, it's essentially get a grade 2 or grade 3. And you might think to yourself, how do you get it in the drop zone? Well, you can discard them from your hand for the ride line, and that means you can negate this card. And it also means that you don't discard the grade 3s, that you actually don't want to discard for this mechanic, but more on that later. So overall, a pretty decent skill. But it also has the effect, although Vanguard the Rigid Circle, when this unit is boosted, costs Soulless 1, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of that battle. So essentially it can become a 23k attacker, which honestly is decent because Cater Sanctuary in the non-Bastion builds sometimes struggles with decent beaters. This honestly is a decent beater on itself. So far, this is all just set up for our main plan, which is of course the new grade 3. And even that, to some degree, is just a setup for something else. Because here we have the quote-unquote boss unit of the new trial deck, which is Youthberg Protofall arms. And this unit has the effect continues when this card would be rode upon. It is also regarded as Ulfberg Skyfall arms. So basically this is similar to the Tekria skill where you could ride both Tekrias on top of each other to still attain Persona Ride. And in this case that's similar, but this particular card works specifically with the new Grade 3 from the set. So this is interesting because this is a skill from the trial deck that doesn't activate with the cards from the trial deck. You specifically need to get cards from the set to activate this skill. Now, does this change anything? No, it just makes the other Grade 3 from the set a bit better because now you can still Persona Ride on top of this. So this is just an extra way to attain that Persona Ride. But the actual fun part comes with the other skills because we have RevolVDress, so this is a new keyword, Auto and Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle this unit attacked, choose up to one card with Revolve form in its card name from your hand, right at the stand, and it gets drive -2 until the end of turn. So, important note here is that Ulfberg Protocol of Arms doesn't have Revolve form in its name, neither does the Grade 3 from the set, which is Ulfberg Skyfall Arms. No Revolve form here. This is a completely different type of card and could be like a lineup of cards that allow you to go into for an extra Vanguard attack. Now, important note here is that with the drive -2, that means the second Vanguard attack has no drive check, so it's basically an extra attack. It doesn't necessarily have to be Vanguard centric because you don't have the drive check, but because it's on the Vanguard circle, that does mean certain skills that activate when your Vanguard is being attacked by opponent's Vanguard or when the opponent's Vanguard attacks do still activate because it's still quote-unquote a Vanguard attack. So overall this is really interesting in the sense that you get an extra attack from your hand that you ride and you can do all kinds of shenanigans. Keep in mind, if you Persona Ride this turn, the extra attack will still get the extra power because the Persona Ride clause is given to you, not your Vanguard, and is given to your front row units, including your Vanguard. So the second attack will still get a decent amount of power if you can Persona Ride this turn. But then this unit also has a very interesting rearguard circle skill on the boss unit, which we don't really see that often. I think this is the first one in Standard and Overdress that we've seen, as it has the skill continues on rearguard circle. If your grade 3 or greater Vanguard was placed this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. So this works perfectly with this other skill because you are gonna place it every single turn thanks to the RevolVDress ability, but also just if you Persona Ride a turn when this thing is on the rearguard circle, it will still activate and you get the extra 5k power, thus making an 18k or 28k beater on the side, which is a solid number that is pretty hard to reach for non-Bastion Cater Sanctuary decks. So overall, a pretty solid boss unit that opens up a lot of interesting shenanigans. But the main application of this card comes from the RevolVDress ability. But without knowing what targets we go into, it's hard to gauge the value of this card. So let's talk about a card that this goes into. Because here we have Ulfberg Revolve Form Zest. And this Revolve form has the effects, although when this unit is placed on the Vanguard circle by the RevolVDress ability, until the end of turn, this unit gets power plus 15k, and if you Persona Ride this turn, it gets critical plus 1. So essentially, you attack with your grade 3 from the trial deck, you get that Vanguard attack for 13k, twin drive, and then after that, you can ride this on top of that and have a 28k attack after that. Keep in mind, this whole mechanic doesn't cost you any resources except the card from hand, which is honestly a fine resource for a second attack on top of your Vanguard swing. So that's already pretty decent. But during a Persona Ride turn, it's basically you have a 23k Vanguard attack that follows up into a 38k attack with an extra critical, which honestly is pretty damn good for basically no cost. But then also, this card has the effect, all on Vanguard Circle, at the end of your turn, choose a card with the RevolVDress ability from your soul and ride it as the rest. So this is what I meant, that it's basically a homage or a copy or whatever, an inspiration of Luard or Gear Chronicle, because you will go back into the grade 3 that you initially started on. Overall, this mechanic is pretty damn solid in the sense that there's a lot of opportunity to expand on this, because it's essentially just a Vanguard swing that goes into another Vanguard swing that doesn't plus you because you don't get the extra dry check. It technically minus you because you lose the card from hand, but you will get a soul because you can rewrite back, and you get an extra solid beater on top of that, which is probably worth the minus in hand, and essentially it's a grade 3, so it's not shield value that you lose, so that is fine. But the thing is, the way that is worded, if the grade 3 in the set also has the RevolDress ability, you can do a lot of interesting things because you can go from one to the other, and especially with Persona Ride being a very easy thing to accomplish. But another thing is that there might be a whole plethora of Revolve forms in the future, because this is just basically a beater. But they could introduce a form that has retire, or maybe allows your back row to attack, or maybe restance a rear guard, or maybe does other types of shenanigans. There's a whole wide of opportunity to explore here, and honestly, this is a mechanic straight out of the trial deck. It's pretty damn interesting, because usually most trial decks are very basic concepts, easy to digest, but as we've seen with Overdress, the trial decks and starter decks mechanics are pretty interesting. Some of them are relatively basic, but with this in the carpool mixed in the whole thing, it is looking pretty interesting and pretty promising also for the 2 other trial decks, because if this is the start, who knows what the Dark-Shaped Dragon and the Stoicheia Plant Girl brings to the table, because this is looking mighty spicy, and I cannot wait to those trial decks, but also to the new version of Youthback, as well as the potential other Revolve forms in the future. But that's everything that we have today. Let me know what you think of these new reveals for Overdress, for the new trial deck, for the new Cater Sanctuary boss unit in the comment section down below, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to speculate, and I'm very curious of what you guys' opinions are on these new cards. And moving forward, I'm very excited for Season 2 of Overdress, as if this is the start, there's a lot of interesting stuff on the horizon, including the new Cross Overdress for Nirvana. But that's everything that I have today. I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap. See you guys in the next one!